I discovered IBC in January of 2018 on a deployment. I couldn't believe I'd never heard this. I couldn't believe nobody talks about this. I went deep down the IBC rabbit hole. As I got home from that deployment, open policies on me, my wife, 3 kids at the time, I thought, this has changed my life to such a degree. Why don't I start teaching this to other people and doing this as a business? COVID, I mean, what a watershed moment for the entire nation. And if you don't inject poison into your arm that nobody knows anything about and there's no scientific studies on, you're out, you're done, your retirement's gone, the potential for future health insurance is gone. I knew it was an illegal mandate. I was against it as a Christian. I knew that I was against it medically. Everything here is bullshit. None of this makes any sense whatsoever.
All right, hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to Remnant Finance. We're going to do a little bit different episode today. We're going to do an interview with Brian Moody, the founder of Remnant Finance. We want to give the listeners a little bit of background of who we are, how we met, how we came to discover IBC, and what our plans are moving forward, just so that there's a little bit more of a personal connection between us and anyone who's listening, so that when we do start working together, we can, where we're coming from. So with that, Brian, what's going on?
Hey, not much, man. Just looking forward to doing a little bit of a different episode here today.
Yeah, sounds good. So we're going to cover some background. We're going to talk about our careers as pilots. We're going to talk about our experience with the mandate in 2021. And then we'll get from there, switch over to the exposure to IBC, how we met, how we came to work together. All right, yeah, so let's just cover a little bit of background. Let everybody know who you are, where you're from, and where you live now, your family, etc.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in the Pittsburgh area. So I grew up in a little suburb of Pittsburgh, and I actually just live one town away now. Yeah, my whole family was from Pittsburgh, so we've got long roots here. My brother's still here. Grandparents were all from this general area, so we've been here our whole lives. I kind of wouldn't mind moving. We get like 60 days of full sun here in this part of the world. But, now my kids are establishing roots here. So, yeah, now I'm, married. My wife is actually from Somerset County, just outside of the spot where Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. That's just a few miles from where she grew up. And actually her sisters had pictures fall off the wall when that plane crashed. She lived so close to it. Yeah. So we got married like 15 years ago this month and have 4 kids now. They range from 13 to 4, 13, 11, 9, and 4 years old. So we're super busy, man.
Yeah, that's quite a spread there. So you got sports on one side and starting school on the other.
Yeah, volleyball, baseball. Son's about to play football, soccer, a couple teams of soccer. And fortunately, my 4-year-old, he just runs around on the sidelines of all these sports for now. So we'll see where he is in a couple of years.
And Isaac's a studly catcher, right? He's got some potential there.
He's pretty good. He's 11. So we'll see what happens here in the coming years. But yeah, he's put a ton of work in with a guy. Catching Made Simple on social media. If anybody out here's boys play baseball, but it has accelerated his game to an unbelievable level compared to where he started. So he's doing pretty well. Yeah, they're all doing pretty well. So they've all been working pretty hard. It's a lot of fun. What's wild is like the larger you go with family, which I believe we're done. I'll be 43 this month. My wife is 44. But when you have 2 kids, you feel like you have to be there for everything. When you have 3 kids, it gets challenging, but you still kind of feel that way. Like you're running around everywhere. And then what was awesome about having 4 is like you're defeated. Like you have to split the difference. So it's like you're going to baseball, I'm going to soccer. If the schedules work, we'll switch next time. It's sometimes it aligns and all of us are at one event, but it's actually awesome, man. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, that's definitely what it's all about. That's why we're doing what we're doing. What about your wife? A little more on her. Is she working now? Is she staying at home? And how does she view what you do now? What's the relationship like there?
And we've been super blessed that from the time we got married, I think she worked while I was in pilot training. We got married and I went straight to pilot training. Like coincidentally, the timing just worked out. It was like a week before I started. So when I went to pilot training, she worked there for like a vet hospital in Mississippi. Because once we got there, she was just looking for any kind of job. And I think she worked kind of admin for that year and hasn't worked since. So our first daughter was born a few months after I finished pilot training. And we've been blessed to be able to financially keep her at home with the family. So she's been a stay-at-home mom and a homemaker the whole time. It's been absolutely incredible, which is a huge job. It's not an income earning job, but it's a massive job that I think we can easily justify as a six-figure equivalent income. For example, in the underwriting process, man. So I mean, we've been just absolutely blessed that it's her being home. I got to say, from the standpoint of where I am, it's strengthened everything. It's strengthened, our marriage, our home, our family, less stress. I've been able to do more, like with starting this business and with all the deployments I go on. So as a provider, it's strengthened my ability to take over that role. It's just awesome, man. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, and when we underwrite spouses that are stay-at-home mothers, when you actually think about what that loss would cost you, it it's a pretty high price tag of having to, as the father, continue to work while having someone fill in that role, and no one's going to do it as well. So it really is the most valuable role and very empowering to be able to set your family up in that situation, especially considering, the more you listen to business podcasts and media and the hustle culture and everything, it's all about leaving your 9 to 5 and working for yourself and being your own boss so that you can form the life you want, so that you can work less hours. So eventually you have passive income so that you can stay at home and continue to create money. So what you allowed your wife to do is jump all of that process of the hustle and everything to be able to stay at home, which is the goal of all of these entrepreneurs. It's like there's this huge disconnect of like we try to do while we work with what we're allowing our wives to do.
That's right. And while the intention of these particular episodes aren't really to talk about IBC and finance, although I can't disconnect from it. I think one of probably the top couple things you can do, especially as a man, since I think our natural market it tends to be more men, but for the women too, is marry well, both men and
Yep.
women. It is such a huge thing in your life that if you are not, before you get married, you should already be aligned. You should really have some core values with whoever it is you're going to marry when you're dating. And I can't define for you what those core values are. That's up to you. Every human being should have some core values. I talk to my kids about defining their core values, maybe through a family constitution that kind of drives those and teaches what you believe your family should be. But, like if you're not aligned in how you want to raise your kids, and if you want to have kids, I've witnessed that now, where I'm at what I call peak divorce season. It seems like people in their 40s is the most likely time, like late 30s into late 40s is when all these relationships kind of unfortunately end. And I've seen this, like they were not truly deep in their hearts aligned on having kids. One didn't want them, one did want them.
Yeah.
And if that marriage doesn't work out, like you're angry. So you need to make sure there's alignment there. You need to make sure there's a massive alignment in finance and a massive alignment in how income is going to be produced, who's going to be the producer. And once you have those children, how that is all going to play out. So yeah, that, like you're saying, that whole hustle culture, I think all, if you could supplant all that idea with just marrying right for
Yep.
you and aligning those values, and it's going to change your economic future. It's going to change your family values. It's going to change everything if you are in congruence with that stuff. Anyway,
Yep.
yeah, little
Fully agree.
tangent there.
So before you went to pilot training, what were you doing before that?
And I was actually a
And
school teacher. So I went to the University of Pittsburgh, got a degree in just straight up mathematics, finished that, started working a little bit with U.S. Steel as a programmer, and I lasted 4 months. So I was in the reserves already. I joined right after 9/11. I joined the Air National Guard in Pennsylvania. So I was just a true traditional enlisted reservist there, and I deployed. This was like 2005. After 4 months working for U.S. Steel, and the cubicle life was not for me, man. I used to chug water just to pee, like, because I hated sitting in front of the computer all day. And it was like I'd look right, and there was a bunch of clickety clackers, and I'd look left, and there was like a line of clickety clackers. It felt like Office Space. It was terrible. I absolutely despised that. So I went on the deployment. I came home, sat down back in that cubicle, and I quit. I like by 8 o'clock that morning, I just walked into the boss's office and I was like, I've been gone for 4 months in this deployment. Like, I'm not involved in anything, and I can't look at this computer. So I'm just gonna quit today. So I quit that job, and ended up going back to school at a little place to get certified to teach. And so I was a public school teacher for 10 years, 8 years because military leave for pilot training. But yeah, so I was actually a school teacher for quite some time, and I still love teaching. I ended up despising the institution of education. Well, what it's become.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. So what aircraft do you fly now? And how long? You said you've been flying for
Went to
13
pilot training in
years?
2009. I was one of the old guys. I was 28 years old
Okay.
when I went to pilot training. Most guys were out right out of college at like 22, so I was one of those old heads. But I fly a KC 135. It's a refueling tanker. Still fly it. I've got 22 years now in the Air National Guard here in Pennsylvania. Don't know exactly when that career is going to come to an end, but I'm back to a part-time status. And, I'm anywhere between, I don't know, 6 months or less, as fast as I could retire in a maximum of 4 years. And it was all predicated, which we'll talk a little bit about why here in a moment, but all that's predicated on the next stupid thing the DOD or our government wants to do. And then I'll probably just retire. Yeah. So I've been flying the tanker. I'm an instructor pilot, evaluator pilot. I was with Stan and Val. If we have any military listeners who know what that is, when I left there full time.
All right. Yeah. That's been kind of a ongoing discussion of when you're actually going to get out. And there was the next bullet point here that we're going to talk about, which is kind of the pivotal point for a lot of our for our not only our business but for our way of thinking is the COVID debacle and the DoD's response to that whole situation. So we'll talk a little bit about. We'll jump back to say 2020 and give us a little overview of what you experienced and then how that led to the eventual decision to separate and then kind of postpone that. But yeah, we'll talk through that experience next.
Yeah. COVID. I mean, what a watershed moment for the entire nation and for anybody, but even outside of the DoD, but for our particular experience. And I feel fortunate in that I've always been a little bit of a dissenter, and I've always been very skeptical, and I feel like I've been gifted with discernment. So like when it came to the vaccine stuff, like we were already not vaccinating our children long before this. Like it didn't wake me up for that, but I did accept that I was like sacrificing myself because it was the way I made a living, and the government told us we had, the DoD told us, well, you got to get all these stupid shots and this anthrax and all the other crap they put in your body. So I did it because it was just like, well, this is what I do and this is how I feed my family. But my wife isn't getting them. My kids don't get them. So I was a little bit ahead of the curve, I'll say, on that kind of stuff, and already thinking a little bit differently, even on the financial side. But when that happened, so fortunately, because I have a skeptical mind, it took me maybe 2 weeks into March to just look at that and go like, everything here is bullshit. None of this makes any sense whatsoever. And so I started rejecting it. I was like, I couldn't wait for the neighbors to come to their senses so our kids could play again.
Yeah.
Like I was just like sitting back, twiddling my thumbs. Like, when are people going to realize this is all crap? So as that time rolls on, and I take full advantage of getting to work from home and not have traffic when I did go to the base, and I miss that. But as we get down the road and things start tightening up in the DoD, once they figure out and start, they're following all the BS mandates and all the BS advice of the government, none of which had any scientific backing, as we're finally,
as we just found out what we
we're
knew.
finally seeing, in public and in media, and it's wild. But yeah, so we started seeing this operation. Why did I just forget the Trump's COVID vaccine?
Warp speed.
Yeah, thank you. Operation Warp Speed going. And I remember reading about that, and I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know what mRNA is yet. I don't know what I think, because I'd read so much about vaccines in the past because of being skeptical of them with my children. So I'm like, they're rushing a procedure that takes 5+ years typically to hit the market, and they want to have this thing ready and inside a year. This is nuts. So I knew right off the bat, like, I'm not taking it. I don't care what happens. I'm not going to take it. And spent a lot of that time as it was coming up. Was it August 14th? August 21st, I think.
21st, yep.
Of 2021.
Or 23rd. 23rd.
Was it August 23rd? I can't remember.
August, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that August 21st was when the DoD got their headline red meat, which was approved vaccine, which we know was not an approved vaccine. They basically strong armed the FDA into announcing with an asterisk on it, just give us the story that it's approved. Of course, it never was. I believe that was August 21st that story came out, and the DoD
Okay.
was like, okay, all
And
you
then
guys
2
who have been
days
waiting,
later, the
2
mandate
days later,
dropped.
the
Yeah.
mandate. Yep.
Yeah. The dates were a little fuzzy, but yeah, August of 2021. And I remember, so as that's happening, and we all knew it was coming, like the talk was coming. I can still remember our vice wing commander being like, just get the damn shot. You're going to have to get it anyway. And I remember thinking of that meeting, like, I know one guy retired, one of the members of our practice and a client and friend of mine, like, he's like, no, I'm getting out. I'm not staying in. Like,
Yeah.
who do you think you are?
It's
And I remember
coming.
sitting there thinking, like, I'm not getting it because you say I should,
Yeah, what leadership?
Yeah, it'll be interesting if he listens to this. I'll get a good laugh out of that. uh, anyway, yeah. So as that comes, like a lot of us were studying, researching. I mean, that is all we did, right? For months there. It was just like I've never read so much, so many regs. I've never read so much case law and different things. I've never read so much medical literature, and I dove deep into the Bible. Like I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this, where it's going to go, and ultimately, that's kind of when we all came together in a resistance group that was online, like over the ensuing months that started kind of that April, probably through December, we all kind of found each other. But yeah, man. So what I decided was like, all right, I'm not taking it. They gave us a few months in the military in which we could choose to, or when we were supposed to have taken it. I think it was
November
by like,
deadline.
yeah, it was a November deadline.
Yep.
And if you didn't take it, I still remember my wing commander standing in an auditorium full of all the pilots and everybody in the operations group. And he straight said, if you think you're not going to get this shot, you will be out of my unit by December 31st, period.
And that was important. That date was important to you, right? More than just
Because I was eligible to retire in March 12th. So I would have had I think it came out to like 73 days there because of February. I forget the exact number of days, but 73 days. So 11 deployments later, multiple air medals, accommodation medals, all kinds of stuff that I'd earned through the year. My career was on a trajectory of going up. Like I said, I was working in Stanival, which is like, for those who don't know anything about that, it's kind of like as a flying member or flying instructor or evaluator in the squadron, just kind of the peak of the flying world. And then, but next to starting to run shops and starting to take over commands. So I'd hit the point where I peaked there and everything was going great as far as the career goes. But I'm thinking to myself, like, there's no way you can administratively float me. I already have the good year I need to retire. 70 some days, all that I've put into this, all the summers I gave up with my children. And this is where we stand. Like, we don't care if you don't inject poison into your arm that nobody knows anything about and there's no scientific studies on. You're out. You're done. Your retirement's gone. The potential for future health insurance is gone. Everything you did, we don't care. At the same time that our unit preaches, because we're in the Guard, we're a family. Well, I found out that, that blood was pretty thin, and water was thicker than their blood. They're not my family, and they're lying when they say that, especially in Guard and Reserve units, because you're only a family as long as you comply. Anyway, so yeah, so he's talking about that, and I decided after all the studying, like I'm going to do. We went and traveled down the road of trying to, me and some other pilots at our unit, of looking at the legality of that shot, which it was illegal. Didn't matter. That failed. I submitted a religious accommodation request because I thought I was fortunate in that I was against this in every angle. I knew it was an illegal mandate. Probably could have and should have stood on that. I knew that I was against it as a Christian. I knew that I was against it medically. Like, you couldn't name a dispute or a reason why people didn't want to get the shot that I didn't agree with.
And all of those reasons were accurate.
Yeah, they were. After spending a lot of time in my basement, just praying about it, reading about it, talking to my wife. I remember I walked upstairs and I said to her, well, I filed a religious accommodation request, but I said I had an opportunity to get on I think it was the fourth lawsuit filed. Don't quote me on the fourth, but it was one of the early ones. It was through Defending the Republic. And I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get on this website I'm sorry, not on this website. I'm going to get on this lawsuit. And what that could potentially mean is that I've got a target on my back, because we've already seen that the Obama administration was willing to weaponize the IRS. We already know that the FBI has all kinds of lists. We know that they kind of have like secret lists of people that are dissenters and that they find to be right-wing extremists and all this crazy stuff. And I was like, so this can affect us. I could lose my job. All kinds of bad stuff could happen. We could kind of be targets, but I'm doing it because ultimately, how do I look at my children when they're old enough to understand this and say that I rolled over against my convictions as soon as things got hard?
Yep.
So it was actually an easy decision. It took a lot of prayer, but when I really it kind of just cleared up one day, and I was like, why wouldn't I do this? So yeah, we did all that, and then we were into our groups, and that's where we met, which was awesome. And because like any kind of group you get, we were all singularly dedicated to how do we fight this shot. But over time, conversations spin off as time goes on, and they start going everywhere. And I remember you posted about a red pill book was Creature of Jekyll Island, which it is. It's a phenomenal book. Everybody should get that book. It's like 600 pages long. Get the audio book, whatever. But it starts off like a novel, and it's actually interesting. It's about the Federal Reserve. And when you're reading that, I remember I had messaged you, and I was like, "Hey, man, I think I got this book. I think you should read. It's Becoming Your Own Banker." I don't know if I told you the title, but I want to send it to you. It's 92 pages. If you'll read it, it'll probably this might make sense to you. And we'll let you tell that story from your perspective afterwards.
Yeah.
But you sent me your address. I mailed you the book, and ultimately, over time, you started getting into this and reading and reading and reading. And I was like, hey, why don't you start doing this with me? I was already doing the IBC. So I think I flowed right into your, what you wanted to talk about as far as the exposure to IBC.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I discovered IBC in it might have been December of 17 or January of 2018 on a deployment. And it just kept appearing. That book I just mentioned by Nelson Nash, which changed my life, Becoming Your Own Banker, just kept appearing in my books recommended by Kindle app. Finally, I bought it. I read it twice that night. I couldn't believe I'd never heard this. I couldn't believe that I'd closed a whole life policy in the past. I couldn't believe nobody talks about this because I had been studying personal finance most of my adult life as just something I enjoyed and cared about. And I did the Dave Ramsey baby steps, and I was investing into the TSP a certain percentage. And, I was doing all of this popular stuff. And I'm like, I'd never heard of this, which just seems so much more powerful. And so I went deep down the IBC rabbit hole, which as soon as I got home from that deployment, opened policies on me, my wife, 3 kids at the time that I had, and got rolling. And over time, as I'm talking about it and telling people about it, and I'm sending them to other people to set it up, I thought, this has changed my life to such a degree. Why don't I start teaching this to other people and doing this as a business? But truthfully, like I was thinking about this recently, that just strengthened my resolve due to an event that happened in 2012. And it took me a while to tie these together. It actually took me until just a couple months ago to tie these together. And that event was, my dad was dying of cancer. He was terminal. He was in the hospital. And I took my daughter, who at the time was about 2, and she was his first granddaughter, my first daughter. And she was, the apple of his eye. And so I took her to the hospital to see him for the last time, ultimately. I knew he was having a decent day. And when I took him in, I took her in, I set her down, and he like lit up like a Christmas tree. My dad was 6'3", he was a 230 some pound guy most of his life. And he was probably down to 170 pounds at this point, just kind of wasting away. And he lights up like a Christmas tree, and put her up in the thing. And I'm standing there just like misty eyed, like tearing up. And it's not because I'm seeing her interact with him, but it hit me that I had been lied to my whole life about how abusive my grandfather was to his children and his family. And not my dad's dad, but my mom's dad. Because when I was a little boy, he died when I was a young boy. I would always ask, like, why is grandpa so mean all the time? And everybody made excuses for him. Everybody in the family made excuses, and they said, oh, he had some disease, and he was mostly wheelchair bound, and he's in a lot of pain, and so that's why he's miserable. So here I am, 31 years old, and I still believe, because that's a paradigm that was like implanted in my brain, right? So I've never questioned the fact that when you're in pain, you're going to be mean to people. I just accepted that was the truth. It was what all the people around me told me that when I was 5, and I realized, like, wow, this is love. Like, my dad is in pain and dying. He was on morphine all the time. And he was overjoyed to see his granddaughter. And my grandfather was just angry all the time. And I was just like, so that's who he was. And it started me down this idea of like generational, trauma. I know we hear that all the time everywhere, and I think it gets overplayed. Your childhood trauma is the reason you're an asshole, and not really, but there is generational curses and blessings that occur, and you don't even realize they're happening, that could have started multiple generations before and just get transferred down the line. So started thinking about my relationship with my mom and her relationship with us and her relationship with her dad. And I started diving in and asking all these questions. And the more and more I found out, I just found out he was pretty much probably an abusive asshole. I don't remember enough to know that, but he mentally and emotionally abused his family. And then how that came down to my life, and I thought, I can be the one who changes this generational story. Like, because now I know it, now I see it. It was revealed to me. The scales fell from my eyes, and I could look back and be like, so what do I need to do differently to make sure that we're establishing a generation of love, right? So I'd already been thinking about this generational plan, but I've been thinking about it from the fatherhood side, which is vitally important, right, with your generations. But now I discovered infinite banking, and I went, holy crap, this is how we change the financial legacy of my family. So not only can I shore up a new generational legacy on the emotional and the family side, I can shore up a new generational legacy financially. And my great grandkids will be born multi millionaires because of what I'm starting as the son of a postal worker and a secretary. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Well,
man, that's powerful.
yeah. Yeah. The generational side of it is something that we talk about initially, but as we get into the weeds, we talk so deeply on policy mechanics and living benefits and stuff that we tend to overlook the death benefit side of it a little bit. But beyond that, the long term generational wealth and what you're leaving to your children, your grandchildren, and beyond that, that's really
You know,
powerful.
yeah, and what's cool is if I get to live to see all my children grow up. None of us have a lease on life, so I don't know when that comes. But if I get to see them all become adults and they start becoming income producing members of society, which I expect them all to do, when I die, excluding the money first passing to my wife, but even with that happening, when I die, they're going to have their own income, and they're basically also going to receive my income for the
Yeah.
rest of their lives. So they're getting two incomes now. And then when they die, that transfers down. So now you can almost think of it as like, there's a diminishing aspect of that as it gets used in different ways, but their kids would have three incomes, three
Right.
people's incomes, three providers' incomes when they start. Like, how
And it
awesome
can be
is that?
used, but it could also be grown. So
It can be
that's why
grown. Yeah,
the importance of teaching them.
that's right. Yeah. So super cool. And we don't talk
Yeah.
about that enough. We talk about how to take policy loans and the fact that, your money can be leveraged and it keeps growing while you're using it, and all the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things. But man, like, do you think if your grandfather, my grandfathers are both dead, or their dads or moms could come back and see the world and be like, if I had done this, how would don't you think they would want to see us wealthy and wise? They didn't know better. I'm not blaming them, but it's just like, man, who doesn't actually want that when you really step back and look at it from a 70,000 foot picture? Like, everybody wants that.
Yeah. And we have trouble getting people to look 5 years into the future,
Yeah.
just because of the way that we're instant
Wired.
gratification. And yeah, it's natural,
Yeah.
but something we have to kind of break out. Yep. All right. So current situation is you are still flying, still in the guard, but we're working on, or you're figuring out your separation timeline there sometime in the next couple years or in the next year even, and then full time with the Remnant Finance.
Yeah. So I have some reasons why I like to stay, but it's not such a thing in my life that I'm afraid to walk away from it. So I don't know when the military season will end here, but I'm putting pretty much all of my attention into this, into building Remnant Finance out. We want to become the premier agency for infinite banking whole life in the country, and we're going to grow out a phenomenal agency here. And what's awesome is what we love to do is help people change their lives and help people open their eyes to what we've learned and what we can teach and change their generational legacy. And yeah, we want to help as many thousands of people as we can.
Yeah. That. So yeah, future of the business is bright. Personal life, family wise, what are you guys thinking for? You said you're considering possibly moving to a new area. What does life look like for you 20 years from now?
Hard to say. my family, they most of them want to stay here, and I'm comfortable here. I like it here. I've got friends here, but I would love to move to the Carolinas if I'm dreaming, and why not dream? It'd be awesome to be able to build a compound and keep all the family there. Build enough land that everybody can build their own plot on that land and all stick together and bring their families as it grows in. I mean, that'd be the greatest thing we can do. But yeah, man, my goal is just to help as many people learn what we know in the time I have left on this earth, and I don't plan to ever quit. So retirement, as we talk about it in this world, is not a part of my vocabulary. I plan to do something to produce value till the day I die, or until the day I no longer can, physically or mentally. How that looks, I don't know. It might change. How much of it I put in might change. I might slow down, but I don't plan to quit.
Awesome.
Love what I do, and I love the impact it has on people.
Yeah, let's keep doing it. I'm doing it well.
Anything else,
You got
man?
anything else? No, you got anything else?
I think that gives a decent background for people to hear.
All right, so that was Brian Moody, his personal life, business life, career, etc. We're gonna switch roles, and next one, Brian will be interviewing me. In summary, stop being a passenger in your family's financial future. Boldly take back control of your wealth. We'll see you next time.
Let's turn it around.